After months of incessant infantry and artillery attacks during the winter, Russian troops were now still trying to take the city and overcame the brave resistance of the defenders. Ukrainian troops fighting in the Donbass say they need more weapons to counter the Russian offensive on Bakhmut. Putin's army has spent months trying to take the city, a key target for Russian generals as they seek to assert complete control over the Donetsk region. Over the weekend, the Ukrainians launched a counterattack on Russian positions in Bakhmut, driving several units back from their positions. The leader of Russia's Wagner Group mercenary force said he believed the counteroffensive promised by Ukrainian troops had begun and his troops were observing increased activity along the front. A video has been published online showing a tank driving down a road, followed by shelling of an armored vehicle. His explanation stated that the Ukrainian tank crew was tasked with carrying out landing reconnaissance. As a result, the Ukrainian tank shot at a speed of 75 kilometers per hour and landed 78 shells on enemy targets. At least 6 enemy tanks and other armored vehicles were destroyed. Unfortunately, the fighters did not provide a more precise explanation. Separately, a drone strike inside Russia targeted a military logistics center in an apparent attempt to disrupt Moscow's battlefield supply lines ahead of an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive. The attack, for which Ukraine has yet to comment, is the latest in a series of drone attacks and acts of sabotage on Russian territory. Meanwhile, fighters from the 5th Separate Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces destroyed a modern T-90 breakthrough tank belonging to the Russian occupiers in the Bakhmut district of the Donetsk region. Initially, the tank stood in the middle of the road in the middle of a destroyed settlement with a hatch open in the turret, smoke pouring from behind it, presumably its crew having fled. That's why the drone operator accurately threw a hand grenade into the open hatch, after which the tank burst into flames. On the other hand, Ukraine also destroyed the anti-aircraft missile complex OSA from the Russian invaders in the Avdiyiv region, north of Donetsk. The latter's operators tracked how well the interveners had camouflaged SAM among the trees on the side of the road. After that, the FPV capable of carrying a sufficiently powerful payload flew to the indicated coordinates and directly hit the target. Recently, the leader of Russia's Wagner Group mercenary troops said his troops had advanced 230 meters in the battle that hit the eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. The destroyed city has been under siege for nearly 10 months. Mr. Prigozhin said Ukrainian forces were now limited to an area of only 2.64 km in the city. He repeated his complaint that Russia was ignoring his request to increase the supply of ammunition. Earlier, Russia accused Ukraine of a failed attempt to assassinate President Vladimir Putin in a drone strike on the Kremlin in Moscow and threatened to retaliate. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine had nothing to do with the reported incidents. Ukraine said it shot down 21 of the 26 Iranian-built drones in shelling overnight, covering targets in Kiev where air raid sirens blared for hours all night. Russia says it launched a special military operation to counter threats from Kiev's ties with the West. Ukraine and its allies have called it a war of unprovoked conquest by Russia, which was thwarted by a failed attack on the capital Kiev early last year and Ukrainian advances in the second half of 2022. Over the past 5 months, Ukrainian ground forces have been largely on the defensive, while Russia launched major and largely unsuccessful winter offensives, capturing little new ground. The security service of Ukraine SSU has posted a video showing its special forces bombarding Russian invaders on the left bank of the Dnipro River in Kherson Oblast. The left bank of the city is under the constant control of Ukrainian defenders, including our fighters from the Special Operations Center Alpha of the SSU. We will liberate our Kherson Oblast and other temporarily occupied territories. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported on May 5 that Russia had lost 193,210 troops in Ukraine since the start of its full-scale invasion on February 24 last year. This number includes the 620 casualties suffered by Russian forces over the past few days. In addition, as the command of the Air Force Base of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported, our UAV Bayraktar TB2 had to be shot down. He lost control during the planned flight and became dangerous. In order to prevent some kind of disaster, it was decided to shoot him. We will remind, it seems strange that the alarm was only announced in the Kiev region. And secondly, Russia didn't launch Shahed one by one. The Russo-Ukrainian war had gone through 4 phases: the failure of Russia's blitz tactics at an early stage, and the withdrawal of its troops from northern Ukraine. Second, Russian troops occupied 2 areas in eastern Ukraine and Russian annexation of 4 occupied areas in southeastern Ukraine. Third, the counterattack by Ukrainian troops in Kharkiv and Kherson and the additional mobilization of Russia. And finally, the stalemate along the front and the shift of European aid to Ukraine. The most important development during the war was that the Ukrainian military had retained its organized resistance capabilities and the ability to continue fighting, enabling it to continue to deny the Russian forces operational capabilities. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces have inflicted significant damage on Russian troops with their howitzer and multiple launch rocket artillery weapons. Although the Russian military had an overwhelming advantage over the Ukrainian troops in terms of firepower and mobile troops, including tanks and mechanized infantry, they suffered heavy damage from the Ukrainian resistance. In the year since the start of the war, the Russian military lost more than 1,500 tanks, nearly half the number held by its troops, and more than 2,000 infantry fighting vehicles. On the other hand, during the full invasion, Yevgeny Prigozhin feeds and maintains the entire Russian armed forces through his business, and his Wagner Group has guaranteed unprecedented access to military resources. During the invasion, Wagner was also able to recruit prisoners who would be thrown into Bakhmut, an embattled town in Donetsk Oblast, in the tens of thousands. But the simmering hatred between the Russian Ministry of Defense and Prigozhin came to a head in December. Prigozhin publicly criticized the armed forces for losing parts of the Kharkiv and Kherson regions,